You have been warned. Awesome sauce. So welcome to class, everybody. We are going to be, this is month 3 of our journey into using oil pastels. Here are some samples of some ideas that we may want to work on for our project. The 2 that I have here were made with different colors, and this one here was made with the colors that came in your kit. And if you weren't able to get a kit, that's just fine. We are using Pentel brand oil pastels. They are, let's say, student quality, but they're very accessible. You can get them at Michael's and other places in the world, but they're easy to get. I would suggest get the stuff that's easy to get and not too expensive when you're first starting. So let's see. But you can get oil pastels that are quite pricey, that are like, 75 cents per stick. These are not they. And you may have the question, pastel can have 2 meanings. Pastel can be a light color, like a peach, a pink, a light blue. Those are considered pastel tones, or actually tints of color. Or you can have a tool called a pastel, and that's what we have here. We have a tool called a pastel. You can also have chalk pastels, which are kind of like eyeshadow. They come in these pans that are about that round, and those are chalk. These are made with oil. They're fancy crayon is really what they are. So if you loved coloring as a kid, you're gonna love oil pastels. So hey, Michelle, welcome to the party. So here we go. So let's start by just doing some sketching. And your paper that you have is watercolor paper. It's the brand Canson. I like Canson because, again, they're easy to find. It's easy to find. I actually saw it in Staples today, but normally you can pick it up in Michael's. And it's watercolor paper. You can hear it's got some heft to it. You could also use mixed media paper, but you want a paper that has some stability to it, because you're going to see we're going to be rubbing on this. And tonight we're going to actually do a little bit more rubbing than we may have done in the past. The past couple of classes, we have sort of used the oil pastels in a less robust way, but tonight we're going to level up a little bit, and we're going to create a thicker application of the tool. So with your pencil, yes, what's up?
This paper has like a textured side and a smooth side. So which side are we using?
That
Do you think it's better to use the smooth side?
That you can use either side. So the paper that we're using is called cold press paper. And what that means is, as it's being manufactured, it goes through rollers that aren't heated up. So if you think about, if you've ever used a curling iron, a hot curling iron is going to flatten your hair, or a flat iron, right? A flat iron flattens your hair. So you could get watercolor paper that's hot press, which means those rollers would be hot, but we're using cold press. So you're right, Michelle, there is a texture. There seems to be a texture that's more robust on one side than the other. This is artist's choice, but I'm going to maybe suggest you pick the opposite side to start, because what we're going to do is we're just going to loosen up and sketch some flowers to begin. So we're not working on our finished product right now. We're just going to work on some sketches. Michelle, thumbs up. Did that answer your question for now? Awesome. Thank you. Good question. So what I'd like us to do is just warm up our pencil, warm up our hands, drop your shoulders. If you're feeling some sort of negative way about your ability and to create these folk art flowers, I would ask you just to let that go. You don't need that stinking thinking right now. These are all very easy shapes, and that's why I designed this project to look the way that it does. So the flowers that I'm pointing out right here, those are my imaginary eucalyptus. And really, those are just circles that kind of gather together in various sizes. And I'm going to ask you to sketch lightly. I'm going to sketch more dark so that you can actually see it on camera. But so this is my idea for like a eucalyptus. Just some circles, and they can sprout off in different directions. But they like to hang out together as friends typically. So that's that round shape that I've got going here. And then I've got these rectangles and squares, which I have never seen a flower that looks like that. But isn't it fun to make them? I just think it's great fun to create these. These shapes, these abstracted shapes. And sometimes when I'm sketching these, I'll actually add some petals going around them, which are just like smiley faces or rainbow shapes, the letter U. And then the third flower that I have on this sample here, it's some sort of daisy-like flower. I don't know what it is, but it's really, if you made an X, if you made an X and then just put a rounded sort of teardrop or rectangle around each of those lines, that would be the shape that I'm making. So just loosey-goosey. It's just great fun to make these shapes. And then you can always go in with your eraser, but please do not become addicted to your eraser. We are here to create, not destroy. Mm-hmm. So again, here we are. We're just sketching. I'm just wanting you to warm up right now. And then the daisy that I have here has more petals to it. So that has a circle in the middle, and then just big loppy petals going all the way around it. And then this I consider my tulip shape. And I think what makes it extra special is having this secondary line here, which makes it almost feel like you can look down into the tulip. So that's just a big smiley face with a ripple on top, and then a corresponding ripple just above that. These are imaginary, these are fun, and they're simple shapes. If you've taken other classes with me, I always like to mention that I imagine you going out and teaching other people these things. So I want you to have just the simplest tools you can imagine to make it easy for you to describe this to someone else. And actually, these are the fundamentals for most two-dimensional art. You know, if you were to go and see a painting of a realistic garden or bouquet of flowers, it was realistic, meaning it really looks like the thing. It almost looks like a photograph, or that you could go in and pick it up. It starts off here. It starts off with these simple shapes. So what we're doing here tonight could potentially be a precursor to you exploring more realistic artwork. But if you don't want to, then don't do that. Like, it's just fun to make these folk art shapes. So those are the flowers. The leaves are sort of half circles, semicircles, and sometimes they meet up like a teardrop shape. Sometimes they're like that, I said, a half circle. You could do a jiggity jaggedy. Like if you look at a rose in real life has sort of a tooth to the petal. There's one more flower I'd like to talk about, or a flower shape, let's say, that I'd like to talk about, which is turning the flower a little bit. So I haven't done that really in any of these samples here. Maybe here you can see it turning a little bit because the center of this flower right here is a little bit higher. It's not in the middle, let's say, of where these 4 petals come together. Whereas these 2 here, the center is really in the center. So by moving where you put the center, you can make it look like your flowers are turning away or blowing in the breeze or reaching up towards the sun. So they're not so straight on like a, what is that photo that they take of you if you get arrested?
Mugshot.
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 Thank you. Yeah. So it's not so mugshotty, right? So there's a way to make your flowers seem like they're just turning a bit. And that is, just like I said here, is to sort of off balance where your center is. So let me darken up this one here. So if this is my petal, so if I put it right in the, if I put my center right in the center, it really feels like it's really facing us. But if I just move that a little bit up or down, it's going to give me a different effect. So, and I can elongate it. So instead of it being a round center, if I elongate it a little bit and move it, now suddenly these petals are hanging down and these petals are sort of reaching in different directions. And it's, to me, it's just really remarkable how just a simple detail switch right there can give you a lot of flexibility in what your flowers look like. I mean, you can really go to the extreme on that. So if I do this flower right here, let's see if that's the start of my flower, and I put some petals in. So I've got this center really up top, really to the top of that oval. There's something called foreshortening. So if you were looking straight on at a person and they were pointing at you, their finger would be the rest of their body would be foreshortened based on their finger. Their finger would be the closest to you. So we're sort of acting like we've got this foreshortening happening when we move the center of our flowers. Again, please do not become addicted to your eraser. I could talk about flowers all day, y'all. Okay, so that's our sketch. Let's flip. We're going to work on the full sheet tonight. And I'd like you to sketch lightly so that if you make some other decision, it's not too hard to back out of the pencil lines that you have. I like seeing the pencil lines. I usually keep, so if we look, I bring this up towards the camera, right here, these are my original pencil lines from when I sketched this piece, and I keep them in there. I like seeing them, but I understand if you want to make it so that you don't see that, just be mindful of how hard you're pressing on your pencil. I talked about this before, that artists will often hold their pencil sort of this way, sort of like a flute. So if you're right-handed, it might look like this. And they do that. It's a different way to interact with your tool. You know, you're thinking about the tool as an extension of your body. And I am moving my whole arm all the way from my shoulder. So it's not just this with my wrist. I'm moving my whole arm, my whole shoulder. So as you're sketching that, that may be something you want to try out. All right, so now if we're looking at this sample, I've left myself about a third of the bottom of the paper. Sort of, I was kind of thinking that as like the ground or the earth, versus these two samples here, where I just used sort of the whole page and put some design elements in it. So do what you'd like to do, but I would suggest don't cut it right in half in either way. There's something called the rule of thirds. So if you think of a tic-tac-toe board, there's something in design called the rule of thirds, where when putting things on these third lines gives you a different feeling than if you put it right in the center. It doesn't mean you shouldn't put things right in the center. It's just something to think about. So let's sketch out some flowers. I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna be quiet for a few moments, let you draw, let you think, and not, please don't overthink. Put some flowers in. I did 3 of these daisy type flowers here. What I would like you to think about is creating shapes that are different sizes. So I've got small circles, and this circle is almost the same size as this square. I've got a teeny tiny square up here. I've got what I'm calling my eucalyptus. I've got there's a teeny tiny little circle up there. So do think about having small, medium, large. So I've got large, not as large, not as large, and then medium and a couple of small. So do think of that as you're sketching. But okay, let's just have fun. Let's just be loosey-goosey and sketch in some garden flowers. I'm going to sketch darker so you can see, but please do sketch lightly. It's okay if things overlap. If something's in front of something else, that's totally fine. Hey, Terry. So we are
Sorry,
starting.
I am late. I apologize.
Oh, no worries, no worries. So we are starting with sketching some loosey-goosey flowers. So this is sort of the direction we're going in tonight. I've left about a third of the bottom for what I'm considering the garden or the earth. But you can't do this wrong. Start with a light pencil sketch. And we're just being quiet a little bit while we're sketching. And Terry, if you have any questions, just throw them my way.
Okay, I will. I'll just copy
Cool.
you. Thanks.
But if you can, make sure that each of your little blossoms is attached to a stem. Sometimes it's easy to not see them all, and then you'll get to the coloring stage and you'll realize that somebody isn't attached. And it just it's easier now if you really get your stems in. Because the stems are going to play an important role in a bit. So you don't have to worry about it now, but just make sure that they exist. And I didn't draw in all of the details in the earth. That I'm just leaving to when we get to coloring. And as you may remember, you know, one of the things I like about oil pastels is you can't really, well, you can, but we aren't necessarily doing tons and tons of details. So your sketches don't need to be all that detailed either. All right, so Jim, I muted you. You can unmute yourself anytime you want. Okay, Jim? Let's see. So, all right. So one of the design elements that I really wanted to bring to class tonight were these divided areas in the background. So if we look at the samples I have here, so if we look at this daisy situation, and this is a combination. This is oil pastels and paint. So if you're thinking like, how did you get those colors to do that? This is actually a mixed media piece. This piece here is using the exact colors I put in your kit, but these others two are more mixed media. So if we look at this daisy right here, I've used the stem and the leaf and the edge of this flower to define this abstracted background. Same thing, I put this this umbrella here. I've used the shape of the umbrella to define these abstracted backgrounds, and you can really see it in this one. So I've added just some circle shapes to fill in the background. And I've used the stem to delineate different areas of color. It's just abstracted. It doesn't have a meaning per se. It's not trying to indicate anything, though I guess you could do a sun or a moon, or you know, you could make all kinds of stuff up. And then in the sample with using our colors, you'll see I did that again. So the edge here, the edge of this petal was my dividing line for where I was going to change color. And then I just sort of found shapes within the design to break up the colors in the background. Okay, so now's our time to start coloring. So in our kit, like I said, we've got these 5 colors, but you also have the ability to mix colors. So when we mix this blue and the yellow together, that's where I'm getting this more punchy, limey green. This green that I've used in the stem and in some of the leaves, and I've used it down in the earth, is definitely a different tone, a different rendition of green. This color that I was able to create here in these squares, it may be a bit subtle on screen, but in real life, I've done something really interesting with that dark purple we have and that baby blue. When they come together, they really look quite interesting. And even this sort of brown shade I have going on right here. So that was me sort of piling on the orange and the purple together. So I was able to create a brown tone. And so that's why I specifically gave you sort of colors that may not seem like they are the first things you'd be drawn to in a painting like this or a drawing like this. But it's a great time for us to experiment and see what other colors we can create. In my eucalyptus here, this is mixing the yellow and some of the blue into different amounts. So I've got different tones or different tints of this green color going on because of how I've mixed. So now let's get to coloring.
Yes.
I am going to so I imagine this shape in here. Let me make this a little darker so you can see. I imagine this shape in here is going to be a color, and I might continue it down here so it looks stripy. I'm going to use these intersections of the stems and the leaves and the flowers to delineate where these areas are. And when it gets sort of foggy, when there's nothing really delineating it, I'm just going to make a decision. And again, I liked choosing this blue next to this yellow so I can make green. I would be careful about mixing our blue and our orange because they are complementary colors, and that's what creates that brown. So unless you don't, if you want brown, you're going to need to mix some complementary colors. So maybe your orange and your blue together, your yellow and your purple are complementary colors. So when these get mixed together, they're going to become more neutralized. So you are warned. You do what you want, but I'd like you to understand why things are happening, why colors are reacting the way they are. And now we're just going to color. So have fun coloring. Your colors may interact a bit with the pencil. That's why I wanted you to sketch lightly. And you may want to think about if you're a right-handed person, maybe start on the left side of your drawing and come across, and vice versa for my lefties out there like me. As I already ignore the rule I've just put forth. I would say don't think about it too much, but do remember what happens when complementary colors get smeared together. Only do it if you really want it to happen. I would also like you, so something that's a little different tonight than maybe what we've done before, I would really like you in some areas to really press hard with your tools, with your oil pastels. So here I have pressed more lightly and I can see the paper through it. And then back here where I can see inside the cup of the tulip, I've pressed harder. Really give it some effort in some areas, because we're going to do something a little different in those areas a little later on. Don't worry too much about staying in the lines. And if you get to a point where your oil pastel has sort of run down, you can always take off some of the paper, the container that it's in, if you need to. And this may be a project that you don't finish today. So be mindful that maybe you're just starting it tonight and then you may need some more time to complete it. And that is okie dokie. Okay. I am loving it already. Again, experiment with what happens when you do mix some of the colors. I'm sort of zooming along here just so I can really help out with this demonstration, but again, you can take the time that you need to.
It's the card with the key.
And you can, if you ever wanted to really get a nice point on any of these, you could take an X-Acto knife or something and sort of carve it into
Yes,
a
and you can
shape.
put some in the closet. I cleaned out space in your closet.
I really like what happens when this purple and the light blue mixes together. It like becomes this cool periwinkle. Okay. Now I'm starting to put in my background, going around my flowers and letting the flowers and the stems dictate where one color is going to begin and another is going to end. So what we're doing is we're thinking about the negative shape. We're coloring the negative shape. So the positive shapes here would be our flowers, and the negative shapes are the background, what's not our flowers, basically. And again, find, especially in the background, maybe give it more pressure than we've done before. Really, make your table shake a little bit. Because we're going to do something in a little bit to experiment with a new technique we haven't done in this class before. And so here I've got sort of this space where there's nothing delineating how I should break up the space. So I'm going to use the edge of that square flower as my stopping point for the blue here. And if you need to turn upside down so that you have an easier time getting to a space. How you doing?
I'm having a good time.
Good. That's why
Taking
we're
me back.
here.
It's taking me back to 68.
Feeling the flower power?
That's it. Be sure to wear a flower in your hair.
Yep, yep. Just seems to me that this is a great way for a community to spend time together, you know, coloring some simple flowers.
Should flower in your hair.
And you may see that some of your colors on your stick itself may get a little may have interacted with another color and it may be on your stick. So you could always, I have plastic on my table, but if you wanted to rub your stick down a little bit on a paper towel or something, just to sort of get a clean spot. Okay, when the blue and the yellow come together, you can use the tool itself, this pastel, to sort of rub them together, but you can use your finger and really, really rub. So we were putting down a lot more product potentially than we've done in other classes, because I want you to be able to really, really rub and mix these colors. And it looks different. You'll see it's a different technique. So I've got my baby oil and my Q-tips here. It looks a bit different than when we are using the baby oil. I would say let's not do too much with the baby oil right now. If you want to go back later, because there's another step here that I want us to get to tonight. If you want to go back later and add the baby oil, by all means. But for now, let's try to stick with just the oil pastel. And like I said, a stronger application of the product, at least in some spots. It's okay if you don't do it everywhere. So I'd like to use this purple now, but I'm gonna need to be careful because I've got these purple flowers up here and I want to really make sure I can see the difference between the background. So maybe I will, I'm just going to leave a little bit of a white space between the flower and this background color. You know, if you go out and buy a kit, you can get, a kit of 50 colors, these Pastels colors, very inexpensively. And you may just decide, oh, I'll just pick a different color. But I do think it is a great exercise to limit your palette and sort of be resourceful and thoughtful of where things are going to be because of this limited palette. for a girl like me, it's really an exercise because may not be a surprise. I love all the colors, and I want to play with all the colors all the time. How's everyone doing? Thumbs up? Cool, cool, cool. I'm excited for when we get to, so we've got abstracts coming in one of the classes. That's gonna be fun. And we're really gonna talk about a lot of color theory when we go to the abstract. So this is sort of a warm up, is especially, you know, this background technique that we're doing, sort of a warm up for when we get to abstracts. So here I've got this blue and this orange coming up to one another. So I'm just going to be real careful to not overlap too much because I want to keep my colors vibrant. But where the yellow and the orange are coming together, and I have to be a little bit careful because my hands are starting to get dirty. So I'm just going to take, I just have a cloth to wipe off a finger so that I'm not mixing. That is cool. And this is why we really need sturdy paper, because if you're using paper that doesn't have as much weight to it, it's going to start to disintegrate a bit. The dog has just reminded me that it is supper time for her. She's gonna have to just hold out a little bit. She's gonna have a protest. Okay. If you're into mixed media art, meaning, you know, maybe all in one art piece, you're using paint and oil pastels and colored pencils, maybe you're using gesso. If you're into creating mixed media art, this is a really fun project to really test out all of your different tools and see how they interact and see what happens when you layer, you know, one brand's paint and another brand's charcoal pencil. There's, you know, you don't need to have you don't need to be too attached to the outcome, right? It's just a fun doodly subject. And in my opinion, it can't be too many flowers in the world. All right. So. All right. Does anybody want to do a midway through show and tell? Any takers?
Mhm.
Good. Okay, so I'm not nearly done. Most of my art pieces aren't one and done. Sometimes they are. And recently I've done a couple pieces that were like done very quickly, and it made me a little sad it was over so quickly. But we're not nearly done. But I'd like to talk about the big reveal extra thing that I'd like us to experiment with. I'm not sure if it's going to come up on camera, but you just have to see it for yourself. All right, so find a spot where you've got a lot of products laid down. It's really thickly applied. You can't see too much of the paper coming through. So find a spot where, and sort of a larger spot so that you can really experiment with this. Pick a spot, and I'd like you to pick up your pencil, hold on to your eraser, and pull your eraser off. So now we have this metal barrel here. We're going to use that as a tool to scrape away some of the oiled pastel, to make designs, to maybe get back to some of the white paper. You could use it as highlight. So if I'm just going to make sort of a design right here. This should be coming up on camera. I can see on my camera. And then if you look in the inside of your pencil now, you have all these shavings. So you could do this with a small screwdriver.
Well, I don't get it.
You got it?
No,
Did it work?
I don't understand.
Okay, so find a spot that you really have a lot of product on it, but maybe not. It doesn't work quite as well if you put the baby oil in. That's why I was trying to get us to avoid the baby oil. Maybe put a second coat over an area if you need to. Again, so you can't see too much of the paper. And then push down and scrape away some of that oil. So this allows us to do a lot of fun stuff. So if we had areas that were really really overlap. So I'm going to come down here into my earthy area. I'm just going to put down a lot of yellow so you can see it. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to put a lot of blue on top of it. I'm really low on my blue. I need to unwrap a little. So then if I put a lot of blue on top, whoop, and now if I scrape away, I'm able to see the colors underneath. Did that work, Jim?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just don't like doing it. I don't like it.
Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough. but now you know how to do it. And as I was saying, with this oil pastel, you really can't get a lot of detail because of the size of the tool, right? It's not a fine point like a pencil or
That I
a
agree
small paintbrush. But by using this scratching technique, you know, do you ever have a in school those, like, you'd have it would be like a black board and you would scratch into it and you see like all these rainbow colors underneath? It's sort of the same idea, but you can scratch in light. So if you wanted to take some of the color away and get back to the white of the paper or to another color like I have down here, it's a way that you could do that. So abandon it, ignore it if you're not digging it, but it's just something else for you to have in your artistic toolbox.
Philomena,
Yeah.
I don't dig it.
You don't dig it, that's fine. That's fine.
Philomena,
That's-
I'm going.
What'd you say, Michelle?
I have to go because my battery is gonna die.
Okay. Well, thanks for coming to class, Michelle.
Yeah, I'll show you what I started. I'll just try to
Let's see.
finish it later.
Oh, hold on. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it.
That is. I like that.
Yeah. Lots of movement.
Hey, ma'am, it was good to finally catch up.
Yeah. See you.
Okay, hopefully we'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
So again, you can do this with lots of different tools. If you have, again, a small screwdriver at the dollar store, you can get a little pack of like 3 or 4 of them, which is now the $1.25 store. If you were doing a portrait and you wanted to put in, some crow's feet, it would be a real good way to accomplish that. It was with the scratchy. And it's easy enough. If you're not digging that, you can go back over it with more of your color and sort of rub that out.
Yeah, when I try it, it's not removing the color, it's just sort of smudging it. I guess it's my technique is wrong.
And you're using the metal on the, yeah?
I mean, I can see the color in the
Yeah.
where the eraser was, but
I kind of like it.
Cool.
oh, I knew that would be good. I like to hear that.
Yep, I do like it.
It's fun. It's a good time.
Good.
Flower.
Okay, so then what I'm doing down in the basement, down underneath the flowers, was I was just creating imaginary layers of the earth. And honestly, as I was doing it, I was sort of thinking of this meditation of feeling supported and feeling just sort of connected, that the flowers were coming up out of this layered earth with all these colors. You know, you don't have to romanticize it as much as I do, but I just sort of was following the shape of the ground that I had drawn in. And then sometimes I use the oil to make some of it seem a little bit more smooth. Sometimes I left it a little bit chalkier so I could see the paper through. And in some of these areas, I've got the scratchies happening, where I took off some of the materials with the back of the pencil. And to me, there's just something really peaceful and calming with just, you know, literally going with the flow of the shapes, letting the different colors sort of interact with one another and be in conversation.
Philomena,
Yeah.
see your painting on the right? The purple
Yeah.
squares up in the top. That's very symmetrical and divided well. Did you do that on purpose?
I was thinking of this being my light side. So you see how I have the white on the petals?
Yeah.
So my thought was that the light was coming onto this surface and sort of lighting half of it. And I used, so I smudged with my finger at the top, and on the bottom there, I can't tell what's coming up on camera. There are the scratchies. Can you see the scratchies?
Yeah. But that's nice. I see that. Interesting.
Yeah, I'd like for my artwork to be interesting from across the room, and then also interesting when you stand up close.
I just like that the purples you have in both of those paintings, how they're spaced apart. I don't know it's symmetry or what, but it looks nice. It stands out.
Thank you. Thank you.
You should be an art instructor.
I should try that. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'm feeling very lucky right now. I was granted this opportunity to be in the New York Education in the Arts Roundtable as a teaching artist. So I'm going through all of these seminars right now about being a teaching artist, and I just feel so lucky to have found this. You know, my teaching well, I was a nanny for a long time. So, you know, whenever you're around kids, you're always educating them. But, you know, my actual dedication to education started a long time ago in big, scary corporate offices in Manhattan. And I realized I didn't like that environment, but I loved sharing what I knew, and I loved helping other people essentially feel less freaked out or stressed about a new endeavor. So I feel really lucky to be here, honestly. And I'm so grateful for the library for producing these. And Emma, thank you so much for being here. It's really cool that you're hanging out with us. So now I've got like this alien thing happening down here in the it's like, what will it be? I hope it's something good. This is another kit. This is from the brand Artist Loft. You can get at Michael's. I think this entire kit was $5. I've had it a long time. So these are, I would say these are, the Pastels are a little bit better quality than these, but these are still pretty nice. And then again, they can go up. So this whole kit was $5. The ones that we're using, they're definitely less than $1 a piece, the ones that we have here. But again, there are very fancy ones that are $1 and up for each piece, $1.50, depending on what kind of pigments they're using. And those, some of them are very soft. So these are sort of a medium soft. So you can lay down a lot of product with a little bit of muscle. There are some very soft ones that are almost like lipstick.
Elmina?
Yeah.
Do I need to keep them in a plastic bag so they don't dry out?
No, they'll essentially never dry out, but they can get dusty.
It what?
So they can get dusty. So I wouldn't just leave them out on a table. But oil pastels, in essence, never dry, which is not my favorite detail about this tool. You can, if you were to frame these up, you'd want to put them behind glass because the oil is always emollient in this. There is a company that makes a fixative. So think about like hairspray for your oil pastels, but please don't use hairspray on this. It'll make everything gummy and yellow. But the brand, I think it's Sommelier brand, has a fixative you can use to make it so that the oil is no longer, you can't smudge it anymore. But you don't need to necessarily go through all of that. If you just put this behind glass, if you frame it up behind glass, you'll be okay. And again, don't worry. We have about 15 minutes left here tonight. Don't worry if you don't finish, if you didn't completely cover your paper. Like, I'm definitely gonna let this sit and come back and do some more details. I'm going to rub some more things together so that I've got some smoother areas.
Hey, Coach?
Yep.
One of the other things that you're teaching me and I'm seeing is that how you color in the background really makes what you have in the foreground stick out. That's amazing.
Yeah. So this, for me, this purple and yellow combo is probably really vibrating and coming forward because they're complementary colors, and the ways that our brains process that makes them really interactive versus this yellow and orange. Because they're analogous, they are on the same side of the color wheel, they sit right next to each other, they don't get that vibration. And on this one, I actually went through and I actually highlighted, there's little green marks on some of these petals because I was trying to make them more important. So in fact, I would probably do that here carefully because I don't want to smudge this orange and this green too much. And though orange and green are not complementary colors, so the complementary to orange is blue, green is made up of yellow and blue. So I need to know that so that when I'm interacting this dark green with this orange, half of this green is blue, essentially, probably more than half because it's so dark. So there's a lot of blue in this green. And if I interact too much, smudgy, orange and this green, I'm going to get mud. So even though it's not the complementary to orange, it's made up of the complementary to orange. Woo-hoo.
When do you know that you're done and you need to stop adding?
When the dog needs to be walked. Yeah, that's a great question. So Jim and I had a conversation about this a couple days ago, that I have this art mentor who makes us name our project, our piece, before we start. And his idea is that by naming it, you'll have a better idea of when you're done. So if I've named this a page full of flowers, once it's a page full of flowers, it's done, right? If in theory, that's a harder thing for me. I go in for as long as I can in a sitting, and then in the next few days, I call it flirting. I flirt with my art piece. So I'll have it either hanging up or on my table, and I kind of walk around it and look at it from different angles and squint at it so that I can see if I have not enough highlights and lowlights, or depth and highlight. And then after a couple of days, I just let it be. It's like, okay, it's done. It's done. There are other paintings to make. So it's a very good question. Like, so Jim, how do you know when your article is done? Like when you get to the word count, or
I get to the bottom of the paper.
finito.
So when you've let it set for a couple of days and you're still working on it, are you consciously or subconsciously still thinking about it?
Yeah, definitely. And different perspective is important. Oh, I also think it's a good idea to take a photograph of your piece and look at it in your phone, or look at it, on a camera or on a screen.
That's a good idea.
You can also take it and turn it into black and white, so that you're only seeing values. You're not seeing color, because color is so alluring, right? Color teases you. So if you look at something in black and white, it sort of really highlights what your value structure is. So in photography, there's something called the zone system. It's 0 through 9, so it's 10 zones. And Ansel Adams, if you know anything about Ansel Adams, he was sort of the master of the zone system. So there should be something all the way from 0 to 9 in every art piece. That was his theory. So you should have, right now, this purple is quite dark, and it's coming up even darker on camera, and this green is quite dark. So those are hedging towards the darks. This orange is sort of turning into the middle value. Maybe some of the blue is, but this yellow is the lightest value. So
Well,
I do have a beginning, middle, and end, but I really like it better when there are multiple intensities of value.
well, I don't know, what does value mean? I don't understand that.
So how dark or light something is. So think about a grayscale. You can go from white to black. And let's say you needed to do that in 10 steps, right? You go from absolute white to absolute black. Your value scale is those 10 steps between black and white. And again, it's sometimes hard to see when you're under the spell of color. So by taking a photograph and turning it into a black and white, or taking all the saturation out. So if you don't have like turn to black and white button, take down all of the saturation and everything is going to go gray. And then you'll really see that things may go away. Like right here, this purple into blue that I've got going on, this mix right here, once that's in grayscale, I'm not going to see that anymore. That's going to dissolve into one tone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Does
love
anyone
the
wanna-
science behind what you're doing.
I love it. You know, I could talk about it all day long.